Amateur Radio Club meeting, January version. Here in the cold, it's kind of down today. But, well, we'll go around and make some introductions so you know who you're listening to on the repeater. I'm Charlie, KC0CD.
Barry, W0IY.
Christopher Caldwell, KC0YGW.
Elizabeth Caldwell, N0UTV.
Larry Black, WA0FBH.
Dave Morgan, WA9HBC.
Mike, KC0NXA.
Paul, KD0WLX.
Gary Anderson, WB0GWP.
Al, KA0IES.
Al, K0BM.
Terry, KU0RBX.
Dan, WB0LJK.
Mark, K8XK.
Vince, N2AIE.
Gary, K0GT.
Tom, KD0HF.
Rod, K0DAS.
Chris Spielmander, N0JMP. Greg, KC0SKM.
Joe, WB0YFL.
Rod, AD0GH.
Larry, K9HHK.
Larry, P0MTM.
All right. Well, the treasurer is going to give us a bit of a rundown of the interesting stuff that's been going on the last 6 months or so. It's a story that most haven't heard. I've been a little bit involved with it, but yes, tell us the story. You have to lean it over. It's a little loud.
Okay.
It'll echo.
Oh, so I guess it won't be terribly loud. I'm going to just do the boring part and allow my dad, the secretary, to talk about it a little bit more. Our current balance as of today is $13,774 $27. That includes the 6,500 ish check we got from the
Clubs
clubs
and-
and leagues,
Yeah.
which is roughly what Charlie asked for, so we have some more plate money. So this year, 2020 should be pretty fun. Now I'm gonna pass the floor over to my dad.
So, about a year ago, in fact, I think it was exactly a year ago at this meeting, we were all excited that
Oh, yeah.
Rockwell Collins had been purchased by United Technologies Company, and we were no longer Rockwell, that we were Collins Aerospace, and we could drop the Rockwell from our name. So in doing so, step one was to clearly take Rockwell off of the name and our checking account. And I became involved when I figured out that the club needed to have official correspondence, and I was the secretary, and that is my job. The bank has to turn in a report because ever since 9/11, we've been trying to prove that terrorists aren't moving money through our bank accounts. They have to turn in a report every year that demonstrates that the persons running a checking account are not terrorists. And they do that by taking a look at the name on the employee ID number and the name on the account and making sure that they're in total agreement. The algorithm that they use is they look at the first four characters in the name. So ROCK does not equal COLL. Oh my, there's terrorists here, we have to panic and the world isn't safe. And the result is that we had to go off, and after much discovery, we had to go off and go get ourselves our own employee ID number. In other words, we had to put on our big boy pants because we were kind of sharing an employee ID number with the Rockwell Collins Clubs and Leagues. And as long as we had said Rockwell Collins Amateur Radio Club and Rockwell Collins Clubs and Leagues, ROCK equals ROCK, the world's safe. So the penalties, there's two major penalties for having to go through this. And the first is that it costs the club $247 to get their own employee ID number.
I mean EIN.
Employee ID number. Employer
Okay.
ID number.
Employer, yeah.
Employer ID number, you're right,
Right.
EIN. Thank you. Well, the other downside is that because we're still worried about terrorists, I mean, we're up at this nonprofit organization thing. We didn't have to become a 501c3 or anything like that, which was good. We were just an organization. But the IRS has to have that EIN traced to a human. So the human volunteer was our treasurer. And so when we change treasurers, as part of wearing big boy pants today, we have to file a form, something on the order of, and I got it wrong, but it's, yeah, just file a form 9668 and change the name on that. So this is a new pain that we have to go through. And we're really kind of, it would have been a lot more fun to keep it the old way, but oh, by the way, that wasn't right either, if you want to think about it. This is really right, it's just a pain. So
we have to do that every year?
we have to do that every time we change the treasurer.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah. So let's start talking about that. You know, maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea. You know, if you want to think about it, maybe we do deserve to have a leadership coup here. And I would encourage, I mean, we're quite frankly just trying to do just enough to get by and try to make sure that bar doesn't look so high that it can't be beat. And I think we might have failed a little bit this time. Although it wasn't the present treasurer's fault, it was somebody else's fault. But we're not going to throw anybody under the bus. Go ahead.
We went through this process with Rockwell Collins and Rockwell Collins is still a valid enterprise and valid names because we have
So, that's actually,
That's actually kind of the conundrum, is when we jumped off into that great unknown of let's just get rid of the Rockwell part, actually, Yon Fair Company buildings that we exist in, many of their organizations still operate under Rockwell Collins.
Yeah.
Because the name hasn't changed yet legally.
Right.
So,
Rockwell Collins Clubs and Leagues is still a legal organization. You're right. We could have not changed. It's just, we were so excited because we're amateur radio people and we know better than anybody else what we want to be called, so we did it. So,
Yeah.
any more questions or concerns or volunteers to start the coup? Go ahead, Rod.
Well, maybe a little too late now, but, I mean, legally, maybe could be called Rockwell Collins, but then just as we identify ourselves.
Well, yeah, we could have, but
Collins, Radio Club, or something like that.
we'd been doing that.
So if you want to think about it, this is, by the way, this is kind of extra frustrating to me. But this is one of the managers at the Collins Community Credit Union saying, well, you know, I don't know who you are. You haven't identified yourself. You haven't proven that you are an officer of the organization. I mean, you know, he's going through an identity crisis. Well, of course, being the secretary of the organization and the one in charge of official records and minutes and all, I did stop and I sent him an email. And by the way, my minutes, you'll notice that they never show up in a newsletter. That's because I want to keep that bar way low. I mean, anybody can do better than that, right? But I do have notes, and when I have to, I turn them into minutes. But the other thing is, this little device right here is a pretty powerful record of what's going on. And so I sent him 2 videos. I sent him one video that showed us being elected to our officer, our positions, which meant, yeah, nobody objected. And the other thing I showed him was where we said, oh yeah, we can drop Rockwell from the name, which there was no motion or no vote to do that. But you know, I sent 2 videos. I gave him timestamps of where to look. Just kind of as, okay, this is who we are. So, Mark
Collins
concerns.
or-
Go ahead, George.
Have you considered maybe switching to an institution that won't give us such a hard time, like maybe, other Hills Bank?
Oh, you mean the RUD? The RUD is not the bank.
The RUD is the
not
IR.
bank. The RUD
is
is
the IRS.
The RUD is Homeland Security.
Right, and I get that, but there are people that make the process easier and, use common sense. Oh, yeah, okay, I have an email that says Collins and all of that, and you supply evidence and they just grease the skids.
Well, it's good
Well,
now,
no,
isn't it?
I understand that. Do think about it from any institution's responsibility. They're required to, at the end of the year, every year, to send a record to the IRS to be audited. And so,
Have they accepted
so,
our argument then?
what?
Have they accepted your argument?
Well, we're done. We have a tax ID number. Our money is no longer frozen. They're no longer gonna take 20% or whatever out of it because it's a stale account. I mean, it's all taken care of. It's just there's two penalties.
The first one was 200 and change. What was the second?
The second one is that we gotta tie it to human forevermore. I'd like to figure out how to
I'd like
tie it to
make a
Arthur
motion
A.
that it should be
Collins.
Chris.
Rod, have you got his social security number? Have you got our social security number in the archives?
No, but you could probably find it. Social Security probably didn't exist back then.
Well, it did in '72, so it's.
So anyway, I think we're gonna quit. Charlie?
So were you making the motion that we have an eternal?
Hell no.
Oh, okay.
Because we're gonna have to change this in a few months again, aren't we?
Well, only if he doesn't take the part again.
Well,
We don't have to
with the
change it.
Raytheon thing.
Right, so it's,
Still wanna stay Collins.
but all you gotta do, by the way, very important, if you want him to stick around, you all need to take care of him. And that means at Collins Buffet, when we sign up, help him. You got that? Make everything easy for him. Now, give me that back.
We've got some other future strategies that we're talking about making it easy. Like, for
An
example,
offer you can't refuse.
electronic. We're talking about electronic due submission. Yeah, PayPal's gonna take a cut off the top. We're gonna try to get the mailing list, once we get transitioned over to the new Microsoft Office suite, go set up something that makes the mailing list a lot more humane to manage, because we're still struggling with that.
Yep.
But there's a lot of things where checks get delayed in the mail, or even heaven forbid, somebody gives us cash, and it's like, does the cash really make it? We kinda gotta change, in general, we need to change our behaviors. And a lot of automation, trying to get it down to where it's less work and more idiot-proof, is a good thing.
Go ahead, Rod.
One thing I was wondering about, since we still operate basically as we operate under HR, as an organization, we get funds. What I'm wondering about is all these books that Collins has associated with, we all file our membership with them and then let them as a corporation file to whoever as far
No.
as club
We've
membership.
No.
already had the conversation with Rockwell Collins Clubs and Leagues. This is the way it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
nothing with HR.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we're not.
Yeah.
So that was part of the excitement. The other thing is, I was too trusting, I guess. I checked out, whatever, 2 items. That would be the KX3 and the crimper for the power pole to 2 different folks, and I don't remember. I didn't get it written down. I don't remember who.
I've got the KX3.
Ah, thank you.
had it,
I see that hand.
you, and then we didn't know where it went. Okay.
Oh, you've been using it? Well, good.
Well, no, the group has been, so yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's. Whew.
Yeah.
I thought it
It's
had.
in good hands, it's still with the club.
It hadn't been moved to Mexico yet. Oh, okay, good.
Not on eBay.
It's on eBay with my sticker on it that says W0CXX. Okay, I've been pretty quiet around the station. Do have some other things going on. This is the list as we have it now. Yes, Treasurer's on there, isn't he? Yeah, good. Our forever treasure. Okay. And just kind of a move down the list here. These are the CXX. I looked them up. This one, it's interesting. Slick Rock, Washington, Utah. Yes. These guys have contacted me. Said, when are we going to have an event? Let's do something here. They changed their call. And the Southern California chapter, I don't know how active Paul is, but they're there. And then there's this one. Somebody says, the station isn't out on Highway. Yeah, well, that's where he is. And this one, look at the name. My goodness. The Rockwell. What's that?
Must be a terrorist organization.
Yeah, must be a terrorist organization. And this is CRC. I did look, and W4CXX is open, so if they wanted to change their call, they could do that. But the question is, do we do an event? And there's been some feedback from some say, yeah, that'd be a good idea. We haven't done anything in years. Does anybody know what we did 50 or 60 years ago? We can stick a sticker on and say this is in celebration of the release of the Gold Dust Twins. Well, that was 55, but or thereabouts.
I'd offer an idea.
Okay.
So it's no secret that we're going to be merged with Raytheon. And Raytheon happens to be my customer, and I was out at their facility in Fullerton. And for once, the meeting was in a permanently portable temporary building, right? And I was walking to the building, and one of the things, they had a guard check there, and it said, don't take any pictures, so I honored that. But I turned around and I looked behind me, and there was a tower and a tribander and all kinds of fun stuff up there, and I thought, So I went back to the hotel room and I looked up Raytheon Amateur Radio Club. Raytheon Amateur Radio Club's been in existence 10 years longer than us. And George can attest to this. They're very active, they're very plugged into in both Southern California and evidently in Arizona, the hospitals. And they've got a strong presence in public service. I believe if I followed things through, somehow they managed to pick up the TRW call sign, which blows my mind, because I thought that station was in the Northrop Grumman facility in Hawthorne, California. So I'm really confused about that find. But it might be neat to do an event where we celebrated the merger in the future and brought in all these other really cool historic calls and public service oriented folks together. When will that happen? Who knows? But I mean, it's supposed to be this year.
Well, that'd be a big certificate, man. You have what, 15 different stations? Wouldn't that be fun?
A little bit hard to chase, right? So if you're going after CXX, you're listening for CXX, but then what's their call?
Well, there's a bunch of them. I mean, we're CRC already. We're already not CXX.
Well, those guys could change. It's open. Yes, Larry, what'd you have?
Didn't the 30L1 come out in 1960? That's
30L1 in 1960?
something like that.
We could say that, but
We could check. You can look on the Rockwell Collins Museum site, and
Oh.
Larry posts a little thing like so many years ago in history, this month.
Yep.
He keeps a whole list of stuff up there. I mean, I don't know how prominent it has to be, but there's always something happening.
Yeah.
50 years ago, 60 years ago in this country.
Well, so what is the interest in running an event? How many would be interested in operating the stations? Well, that's why I suggested at least a week, maybe a month, because then, you don't have to be tied down to a weekend, and, well, I couldn't make it that weekend, so I'm off. So, all modes, nowadays, you could, all the stations, both stations will do all the digital modes. I've got them set up for that, and if anybody wants to get checked out, I can do that for you. All the calling stations. One of the big things would be the QSL cards. Before we'd start this, we need a commitment to somebody to handle that. That's not an insignificant task.
Didn't was a QSL manager the last time?
No, I was the QSL manager.
The last time?
I've done all the QSL cards for all of the contests
No.
that I've been here.
Oh, I was gonna say,
They're
'cause
not since.
there's some that you didn't do.
No, I know.
Yeah, I remember some of those.
I did them at the Hamfest, what was it, 2 years ago, Dave? When did we do the joint station out there? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I did that. That was the last event that
We-
we did. And then before that, we did 2 other events that I have QSL cards for. I can't
We're
remember.
at 80
Bob
years
Lee-
or something.
Bob Lee found us a
When
QSL
was this?
manager one time, I thought.
Well, we could do that. I mean, we got some money to, if that's what they charge.
I don't know what they charge.
But
So-
Dave, we have a great guy that can do QSL cards. I mean, graphics. Dave turned me on to, what was that guy's name?
Jeff Murray.
Jeff Murray. And he would do a great, he could do a caricature card with a nice graphic of a radio or anything. He does a great job.
Well, that'd be cool. So, okay. Yes.
So, in terms of QSL cards, DX Keeper, you can import whatever. Nowadays, you have like N1MM or TR4W or a lot
Right.
of these N3FP.
Sure.
But you can take the ADIF file into a program like DX Keeper or ADI or BB, and it'll automatically generate labels. So it makes filling out the cards a lot easier. So you just take a whole bunch of 3-column labels and stick them on the cards,
Did
and you're done.
Did I hear somebody just volunteer to be the QSL manager?
Sounds like it. But, I mean, the other thing that we did, the last contest that we did for the club, not the Central City thing, but the last club thing, if you contacted 3 or 4 of the club stations, we did a certificate, and
Yeah.
we mailed out all those certificates, and that was a lot of work. I'll be honest, it wasn't, I mean, we spent a good amount of time working on that. I employed my help of my children at that time too, so.
Oh.
But if you're gonna do a certificate, that makes it a lot harder.
Ah.
So there is an alternative to certificates too. The club in Tucson, what we did was we do like monthly HF outings, and then if somebody wants a certificate, they request it online, and we send them a PDF with their, this is to certify K7T worked, so and so for this event, and and every event has its own little certificate and whatever.
Yeah,
and then
that's cool.
It doesn't cost the club that much, so that may be an alternative rather than, these days people don't want paper anyhow. They'd rather.
Well, if they get that, then they can print it if they want.
Exactly.
Yep.
That's kind of what CQ does, and a lot of other people that hold contests. You can go in, and if you want, they'll send you the PDF, and you can print it out yourself.
That sounds like a good idea. So, I will work up an idea for all this, and well, the last one would be a good thing. So it'll be a couple months out, and I'll be contacting folks. Yes, Rod.
Yeah, I think you got like almost a 2-month lead time to get it to us.
Yeah.
More like 3 months for the special event thing.
Yeah, right. Well, it would be 3 months for, we could get it pulled up, so.
To get it into the Q Street, the magazines.
Yeah, well, I mean, if we work,
We know a guy at the ARLO.
yeah, we do.
It doesn't make it work fast.
We got a guy.
but I mean, we're looking at May or June here, you know, so. So the final parts would be talked about in the April April meeting. So we can discuss it then. What's that?
You mentioned June, one of the ideas might be to hold during field day.
Yeah, there'd be a lot of people on. That would be an interesting addition. Yeah. And we'd be operating in the station. So we wouldn't be out in the field, but that's okay.
We could do an operation from the field as W0CXX.
You could, yes.
Well, we could also, if we planned ahead, we'd have WCXX on only one time in one station, right?
No, we can never plan that way.
How boring.
Boring. Gotta have 10 calling the same call.
You might explain, that actually happens.
Yeah. We had, at one time, we had a president and we had a station trustee. And we had one group contact the station
We had a president, we had a station trustee. We had two groups who were interested in using the call for field day. One group properly contacted the station trustee and got permission to use the call. The other one contacted the president. And we couldn't figure out. Gary, were you on one of the stations? Were you on the station that did it right? So there are probably people in the room who were on the group that did it right, and Rod and I were the ones that did it wrong.
Get nailed with a lot of dupes and couldn't understand.
Yeah, what do you mean, 1E?
Well, we do have two calls in town, so, you know, that could be
We
worked.
still
but-
got to plan ahead.
Right, well, that's what I said. We'll work it out and discuss it some more at the April meeting. And yeah, field day would be already, that'd be good. Okay. Yes, here he is. Mark's going to give us a quick rundown on this one. This is, I didn't know that they had this much set up out there.
So I want to make sure everyone's aware of this, that from last June, I believe, through this February, a Collins exhibit is at the Marion Heritage Center. So I'm going to flip through a few slides real quick, and the main thing is there's some neat stuff if you're interested to go see it. Some of the materials include a replica Collins attic camp shack. You've all seen pictures of it. They've got a replica set up, complete with the low ceiling and angled sidewall.
Just clip that. That's for the recording.
Okay.
You just hold that, I suppose.
Yeah, and we notice the QSL cards that are up are actually photocopies. Michael Collins apparently kept the originals that had been up in the real ham shack. So, you know, those are kind of duplicates of it. Yeah, there's the original ham shack photo that we've all seen. Now, I'll mention there's two transmitters that we see here. The one on the left used a 250 watt tube, which was a pretty big deal back in '25. And one on the right, a smaller 50 watt tube that presumably would be better at higher frequencies, just, you know, less physical size capacitance. So we've got two of them on display now. The one on the left is the original. You can see lower left, the large tube mounted horizontally. And
That's actually built by Art.
actually built by Art, and I think Rod did a little bit of cleaning up, spiffing up, but it's like original.
It's been refurbished, but I think somebody restained it.
Okay, so perhaps refinished and restored. The one on the right is a replica built just weeks ago. Larry Pinkston, I think with some help of Larry Tajan, Rod, you know, others, put together. And you know, look at them side by side, and just, you know, beautiful reproduction. Large tube in the left one, you can see there's a smaller 50 watt tube in the right one. And if you really squint, you say, well, that tube's mounted upside down. And sure enough, if we look at the back of it, you can see that it's a type 203 tube mounted upside down. And yeah, it was, you know,
The
it's true to.
electrons don't get confused when they're upside down like that?
Well, it's for working across the equator, I think, was the main.
Right, yeah. It spins the other way down there.
Actually, it cools by conducting heat up through some very heavy elements.
basically, if you turn around the other way, then it conducts the wrong direction, I guess, I don't know.
Anyway, really nicely done. So this is, you know, all on display out there. Original Collins receiver, and they were, I believe, 199 tubes, and sure enough, you look on the left, one of those was installed upside down. I guess it gave him shorter leads up to the coils. Makes sense. Other Collins equipment on display, posters, memorabilia from the Apollo days. And then since it's a 25 ham shack, we've got some question for context of, well, what did radios look like in 25? So there's some early to mid-20s radios, and I'll point out a couple of them because I can't resist. Lower left is a Tusca tuner. You might remember that Clarence Tusca was one of the co-founders of ARRL, and then he quit and went into the radio business. So that's original Tusca, I believe, 22. And if Charlie, can you go back just an instant? Or wanted to show lower right, Quaker Oats crystal set. So how many of us hams built the crystal set back when we were little, or maybe when we were big? And often you say, I'll get a Quaker Oats container, beautiful cylinder to wind a coil on. Hey, they were doing that back in 21 when broadcasting had first started. Some marketing genius at Quaker noticed this and said, hey, you know, let's have a promotional item. Send in 3 box tops and $1, and we'll send you an official factory Quaker Oats crystal set. There's a coil around it, but they had to slap the label around the outside of the coil because it's a promotional item after all. You want to see that label. Anyway, so stuff like that is on display.
Neat.
And those are quite rare, too.
Yes, there were, I think, 250,000 of them roughly built and sold, and they got tossed. And yes, now they're scarce collector's items. Who'd have thunk it? And so finally, there's a presentation coming up on GPS, and I'll encourage you to check the Marion Heritage Center website for hours to see the display. It's generally Wednesday through Sunday afternoons, and then, go to this presentation and mill around afterwards and look at the other stuff. Thank you.
All right. Good.
Yeah.
Microphone there.
Can I clip it?
Figure out how to make the clip work again. There we go. Okay, and just a few things. The stations are pretty much the same. If anybody wants to get checked out on something that you don't know how to use, we've got Flex 6000 units with the latest software in it. And so if you want to, we've got a 64, 66. We got a 6600 down in this station. So I'd love to check you all out on that. Let me know. And about the same thing down here. So next. Any questions on all that? So now we need to switch to this one.
Hey, Rod, do you have any announcements like from the league or upcoming events, ARRL events in the area?
Yeah.
Why don't you grab the mic for a second?
Yes. Hold them both there.
Okay, well, if you haven't read the ARL website, you might want to take a look at it because we let our CEO go 3 days ago at the board meeting. The new CEO is Barry Shelley, and one, I forget he's called XYZ or something. Barry's been retired about a year. Previously, he was the interim CEO while we searched for Howard Mickle. And prior to that, he was also the chief financial officer. So even though he's probably not in very many people's logbooks, he's a senior financial and knows the whole organization inside and out. So, you know, the place isn't going to fall apart, but I'm interested in everybody's comments on Howard, and I can't tell you the details of what happened because it's a, quote, personnel matter, but needless to say, it's got a lot of people concerned, including me. the elections are held every 2 years for the officers too. And the president of ARL, which is elected by the board, is still Rick Roderick. He managed to hold off his competition and will have another 2-year term as president. The other thing I might mention is this weekend is the Midwest Division Convention held in conjunction with Winterfest put on by the St. Louis and Suburban Radio Club. The interesting thing is it's not held in the Midwest Division, it's across the river over in Collinsville, Illinois. But these folks really work hard. They hold this Winterfest every year. It's in a great facility, plenty of parking, plenty of space inside. I think the attendance on the one-day events is typically around 1,000 to 1,200 hams. So I think this year it's going to be even more. They've worked real hard. It's a 2-day event. Look at their website. There's a banquet Friday night in the south side of Kansas City, not at the convention center. And the main banquet speaker, well, there was going to be 2 banquet speakers. Craig Thompson, K9CT, big well-known DXer, is going to talk about the Pitcairn DXpedition that he just finished with a group of hams. He's the banquet speaker. The other one was to be Howard Mickle as the ARL CEO. Well, that's not going to happen. So I'm going to do a song and dance for 15 minutes. But Craig's going to expand his talk, and I think John Yodis, K2VV, who is the heads up the what am I trying to say? The QSL Bureau for Zero Land, as well as he's my appointee for our DXAC representative on the DX Advisory Committee, and the committee elected him as chairman. So if you're into DXing and want to bend his ear, he's got quite a bit of influence in the DX organization with ARL. So any questions? I won't hold this long, but see me afterwards. And I'm interested in your comments about all these things that have transpired. Thanks.
Okay. So Barry's going to give us a rundown on the switch. You're on, man. So this is for the recording.
Okay.
And Joe might come up.
Okay, so we got Joe here. So, I've got some stuff to pass around and things, but in general, I think I was probably shooting off my mouth some time ago about who wanted to have a project done, and Joe said, "Oh, I've got a project," and I was like, "Uh-oh." So anyhow, Joe wanted to do a coax matrix switch, that he and some of the guys a few years ago did that. Well, it appeared in QST and then is in the handbook, the 1 to 6 or 1 to 8, whatever it is. So he wanted to make a matrix switch, which those exist in the world, but they're really complex to get a really good one, and there are, as we'll find out here shortly, some not so spectacular ones. Try not to stand in front of everybody here. So the proposed design was actually, I'll jump ahead here. Joe gave me this, and this was a layout that had radio 1, radio 2, and then antenna 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then these went back out. So you could take this card and you could stack 2 of them and get a 2x6, or you could stack them this way and get 4 radios to 6 antennas. So this design, though, relied on a huge number of relays. So there was a relay here, 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 and here. So each cross point had 4 relays. And for example, if you wanted to have radio 2 go to the top port, antenna port, you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You had 8 sets of relays, 8 relay contacts in series. And that seemed a tad excessive. And also, this combination does allow anything to connect to anything, okay? But how often do you want to have antenna 3 tied to antenna 2? So there are some cases where you don't need all the flexibility. So the first go around, let me go back up here. And Joe had some experience with a particular relay that he wanted to use, and so I focused in on that, so we didn't have to go searching for relays. So an aside here, I got to analyze one of these, but it was just in the last couple of months of last year. I did not reverse engineer the 6-pack because it's not that good to begin with. So anyhow, it's there's on Array Solutions for $523 you get a 2x6, the control head and the remote switch, and that's not really weatherproof. It does say indoors on the thing. And internally, each one of these is a 3-pole Form C contact. Oh my. I hadn't quite. That looked better on the computer screen at home. But at any rate, there's 3 contacts in here, and so if this is radio A comes in and feeds what we took to calling a manifold, but it's really just a bus all the way down here, and it goes over to one set of contacts. When you use this, when you want to get to this antenna, you clump that relay, which brings the signal in, up, one set of contacts, over, and then down the second set of contacts. And the third one is tied to a lockout for the other side. So that run on that relay, those are big contacts, but you've got probably a good half an inch, if not more, of up, and another jump over a 1/4 inch, and then another more than maybe a half inch down again. So you've got a long RF path around that. And to make it simpler, they manually go in and put a wire across the top of the armature. Otherwise, the path would be even longer. So
these are open relays?
These are all open relays. And there's no shielding between them or anything like that. But I'll point out there's 2 contacts in series for every open position. So that's a big deal. We did, so a guy who came to the KiCad talk at the convention in Central City, then came to my KiCad class last fall. He was from Madison, Wisconsin. He drove down to go to the class. And he has one of these things. And at the class, we were talking about it, and I hooked him up with Joe, and they talked about it, and he brought along his switch for me to take apart and look at. So I did get to, that's how we got to see one of these. But it really doesn't meet, if you look at their specifications, particularly for isolation, they claim like 80 dB, and I think they maybe measured that with a Bird 43 and 100 watts or so. I don't know how they came up with that number. We swept it with Brian McCoy. He's got a really nice little network analyzer that hooks to your PC, your laptop, and we swept that, and it's not very good. So anyhow, we made, I'll pass this around. This is the first board, and yeah, Joe's got, watch your fingers on that, there's some sharp points there. This was the first pass I made, And it was an attempt to just try something. And that's not it. Okay, I don't have a separate picture of this. But this was the first attempt to do something, and by some problem based on operator error, we didn't get exactly the internal layers we wanted. But the idea of this board was to have all of Radio 1's contacts, traces on this layer, and in a 4-layer board, and then on the other side, all the Radio 2 contacts. So Radio 1 and Radio 2's traces were as far apart as we could get them, with ground in the middle. Yes, sir?
Is this like using the Omron style relay?
Yeah.
The GR2L?
RT2L or some number like that, yes. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry? Yeah, you can read, if you can read the top of the relays over there, you can. Okay, so this did prove something to us, is that we could get to 50 ohms. This had horrible isolation, but it did show us we could get 50 ohms. So then there was a second attempt, and this one kind of did the same thing with one side or the other. And then, and that also didn't work. That was essentially number one with some changes to the ground planes. And the ground planes, the thickness of the material for the fiberglass board, you can't specify the distance, the thickness of the, you can specify the overall thickness of the board, but you can't specify the thickness of the layers. Okay, so that means it's really hard to come up with 50 ohms if it's a very short distance. And we wanted the traces to be wide enough. Those are like 2.5 millimeter wide traces, so that it'll take a kilowatt. Okay, so on our third attempt, we had used what was called a stepped main line. So if we were trying to not have that long stub of the manifold design, and we had RF on the top and bottom layers, a lot of ground stitching, and that's a real pain. And then the testing showed variations in isolation, but it had good impedance. And so what I meant by this stepped main line was, so the radio came in here and either went to this antenna or it went on. It either went to that antenna or it went on. Okay, and this one was going this way. So this would either come, that one's hard to see, but at any rate, you could go up and then, well, without showing all the layers, I can't tell you how that one worked. I lost it. So, that was number 2. This is number 3, I think. That's a good one. There, Charlie. So these are all 4-layer boards, and there's a calculator within KiCad that says if you want this impedance, you need this much height, and so it'll work both in the I have a dimension, what's the impedance, or you could give it an impedance and say what's the dimension. So we got that working and proved on about the second board that worked for us. So then our fourth attempt, and had been several revs of these things that never made it into copper. On the fourth board, we put both the A radio and the B radio traces on the same side. That's on layer number 1. Layer number 2 is pretty much empty. Layer number 3 is ground. So we now know from the prior efforts what the thickness was, and for this particular style of board, and then that set the Z, and then we found the width for the impedance. So we had good results in getting impedances. Then the other thing was on the back side, it's a plane, but it also has the wiring for the relays. So all the relay coils are routed over. There's a header here, and there's a header over here. So those two headers bring out all the relay coils. I didn't put drivers on the board because it takes longer and it's kind of a pain, and so we were interested in the RF performance, not the characteristics of the drivers. So this is the board we came up with. And here's a partially populated one. Watch the back of that, it's sharp. And then one of the things we learned early on, and also the guy from, is that mine? So one of the things that we learned early on and was verified by the 6-pack antennas, you need 2 relay sets of contacts open in series in order to get 80 dB of isolation. One relay will give you about 40. Okay, if you've got 2 relays, then you can get to 80. So the architecture is the antenna port has a form C contact, and you either go towards radio number 1 or towards radio number 2. And then over here, for radio 1, you're on the armature. And so this stub, I'm going to point to this one because I can reach it. This stub, if it's open up here, it's grounded. Okay. If you're hooked up here, then you're hooked up here, and this stub goes over here, and it's grounded. So these are short 2-inch long lines or whatever, and those are wherever the board's gone to there. So that isn't just another piece of copper floating in midair, it's grounded. Okay. And I went with a single manifold for radio A and another manifold for radio B, and the whole circuit board's like 13 inches long, so if you come in one side and go to the nearest relay, you've got a stub of about a foot. And honestly, that doesn't seem to be horrible. So this was the 4th board. We got these, I think, in like August or something. And so here's radio 1, or I'll say A. Here's radio B. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right down the middle. Okay. Okay. So even though it doesn't look like it, I'm sorry, can I have that back for just a second? Okay. Okay, because of the way the coils are arranged, and it looks like there's only one relay on this side, but there's 2 relays over here. That's not really true. This is the center relay, and this is for radio 1, and this is for radio 2. And they're turned around so the coils face certain directions in here. But at any rate, there's and we have Joe has the single working example over there someplace, and it's making the rounds. Dan's got it there. Okay. Here you go. We'll pass that back, please. So anyhow, then the question is, well, how does it work? Well, the results were frankly very good. The impedances Well, I'll show you the stuff here. Okay. So this is from Brian's machine. And in green is S21 and in blue is S11. So that's going to be isolation. And so here are the ham bands. Now, we wanted to know how it really works. This is 2 meters. This is 6, 10, 15, 20, 40, 80. And 160 is down here in the mud someplace. Okay. So, oh boy. Am I looking at the right picture here? Oh yes, this is just, okay, so those are just the S parameters. Okay, so here is, here's impedance. So Z magnitude at 5.3 megahertz, this line is the marker, is 49.5. So here's 50 ohms. I don't know if you can follow that across. But the crappy spots, it's even close to 50 ohms at 2 meters. And then at 120 or so, it's high. At 75, it's low. At 6 meters, it's 45 ohms or something. And then look at here, 10, 15, 20. It's so close to 50, you have to look with a magnifying glass. Joe, do you want to explain more of the graph here at all, or I'm doing all the talking and he's the one who's the expert.
The thing we're really looking at is that the reason we wanted that.
Yeah.
Both mics. These both mics. Oh. What do I need now?
That's for the recorder.
Oh.
We could be online.
See, I hadn't looked at these in a while, so.
Now, you all signed the NDA when you came in, so this can't go on.
Yeah, so our main goal when we were doing this was isolation, because this will be used with 2 radios, obviously. And if you've got a plus 60 dBm signal going out, you need a lot of isolation on the other channels so you don't blow up the other radio. And so that's kind of where we were coming up with this 80 dB figure. You got a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, in your revisions, have you tried using a piece of copper tape on the outside of the relay to increase your isolation capabilities?
No, we didn't. You tried a barrier.
I put a barrier in and I made like little walls out of aluminum and things like that. It really didn't make much difference. It was small.
I had an issue where I made a switch using the same exact relays. Obviously, I'm not using multi-layer board technology. I'm just using a standard just 2-pole board with a front and a rear side to it. And I had it set up so that I'm switching between 2 antennas from with 1 radio, and I have the ability to actually dummy load the radio with a single push of a button too. And when I dummy load the radio, it automatically connects up an antenna analyzer, which allows me to tune my antenna without actually keying up the radio to find the SWR. And I was getting horrible isolation, and I ended up utilizing it's like a piece of tape copper foil that you can even solder to, and I was able to increase my isolation well beyond what I ever thought I could ever achieve. So I was just wondering if you ever tried that.
Well,
Yeah.
so the way the board is, the RF is designed, the radio A is over here and radio B is over here. And they only ever come together in the middle, so there's no crosses. And that was one of the things that we did away with from the early design. Those crossing things, even though they're orthogonal, that's not good enough.
And one thing you can't see is that the relays are backwards on the sides.
So one faces this way, and this side faces that way. So the contacts are as far away from each other for coupling. So that was another thing we saw, is that the relays, the mechanism inside the relay actually coupled together when they were right next to each other, which obviously things do. So that was the other thing we had to defeat. This all started, we did a 8-way matrix that's there's one in both stations, I think.
Yeah.
It's a poor man's version of this. It's two 1 to 8 antennas, and they're put together, so the center is in the middle. And so it's 8 radios to 8 antennas. And so I don't know if we've ever measured what the total isolation of that is, but it's been in service for 5 years at least. So so this one, after we did that other one, this is something I'd had in mind.
Isolation was in the article.
Huh? 8?
We had the isolation in QX article.
Yeah, okay.
All the specs were.
Well, no, just the board isolation was the same as this. It was in the 80s, in the 80 dB range for the antenna switch. And so that's been kind of our number for this. And the people that do some of the designs, like you saw, they use these humongous relays in them. So they're rated for like 5 kW, even with Viswire. And so this one is, I mean, we could put 1.5 kW on it, but if it's got a lot of Viswire, you're going to have problems with because it's only a 16 amp contact. But so it's not made for infinite Viswire with 1.5 kW of power. But this with a fourth, I guess this is the 4th generation of it, and the RF part. One of the things we did too is this is a coplanar waveguide design, so all the stitching that Barry referred to and cursing, lots of cursing. When I said more stitching, so that truly is, and you can see from the plot how that worked out. So when we finally got the depth of the board and the material.
So.
Oh, this is the isolation.
This is isolation. So
Yeah.
let me take this for a second. All right. So here's isolation plot, and what this says, and you can't read it at the top. I tried to put it on top of there on the header. It's radio 2 to antenna 1, and radio 1 to antenna 6. So this is the short path. So you came in on say the left side, and went to the one that was right there, and you came in on the right side, and you went to the. So this is the is this the best case or the worst case? Now I got to look at the board. I don't remember. But at any rate,
this must be 80.
yeah. So
This is 80 megahertz, 75 meters. This is
so here's 75,
and that's 105.
40,
That's,
20,
95. 20 is
15,
20 is 95.
10.
10 is 90.
And look at here, at 6 meters,
It's 80. So
and it's even 60 at 2 meters.
yeah, where's 2?
This is the big band there, yeah.
Yeah, so this is 60 dB
Yeah.
of isolation. And that's going all the way down both sides, so that's the, yeah. So that's going, let's see, where can you?
Yeah, so we're feeding
So-
radio 2 port,
So this
and
is
antenna 1 and antenna 6 are terminated, and then we're looking at radio 1. So we're feeding 2 and looking at port
so
1,
we're
or radio
feeding-
1.
So we're feeding this one
Mhm.
and looking here,
Yep.
and then we're feeding, let's see, the other one is here? Oh, feeding
Yeah.
here.
And
looking-
measuring up on the
and
top.
Measuring on this one. So it's the full length of the manifold. So that is absolutely the worst case.
Mm-hmm.
This would be the absolute worst case.
And that's Brian's measurements. That's not just me. That's
Yeah. And so,
you can trust that one.
so what we were trying to do, you know, if you're at 60 dBm, you know, you're up here and you got this much more isolation. You got that much more isolation to the opposite radio. And so that's our main goal, was to get that isolation as high as possible, especially on 20. You know, this is where that's where you see a lot of activity, where you have a couple of radios and working into different antennas. So that's what we were really trying to get, was that kind of performance. Get that out again. And one of the
When Joe saw that green line, he says he was going to buy us fried chicken dinners.
You betcha. Yeah. I'll buy you the whole chicken. But the one that's going around, that's almost built, and you can see on that there's a couple of N connectors, RPL type or SOs, so it can be built up with either one. You can put N connectors or UHF connectors on it, whatever trips you. And I understand that, Greg, are you doing the box?
Yeah, well, the software.
Yeah, is it a standard bud box?
There's more to come.
Oh, okay.
So, I'm using the main board is now made to fit. It's a little bit larger than this, but this is a standard Bud or LMB or somebody from DigiKey, and we need to have a panel cut with holes drilled in it, and so let me show a couple things. So where are we going from here? So I haven't rushed into it, but we want to make some minor changes. The hole for the center pin of the connectors is pretty big. That can be smaller. There's SMD parts on the board, bypass, just a bunch of .01s around the relay coils. There's relay drivers. So here's a little board. I had got these yesterday. This takes SPI in and has a ULN 2003 driver, and two of these populated with the header pins plug right into those pinholes on the end of that board. Here's an ESP32 that speaks Wi-Fi and has SPI out. So this board can be 3 wires to each of these 2 little circuit boards plugged into there. And I had more pictures. Where'd they go? Well, I didn't get them in there. All right. So at any rate, if you've got this in your garage or someplace that, if you're going to make it weatherproof, that's your problem. but at any rate, a box like this and a box like about this size, just slightly larger than that, 2 coaxes and 12 volts. And you don't need to run a big control cable. It's Wi-Fi. You can go from your PC, open a browser window, and just click on whichever one you want, and it's going to hook up. So we'll probably make a simpler short DC cable thing or something else. But at any rate, if you want to put this 100 feet away or somewhere out in your little building, you can remote control it over Wi-Fi, and you only need to have 12 volts in the coax going out there. So those are features that you can add to the 6-pack for multiple 3-digit numbers. And so other discoveries. Oh yes, we found that you can literally buy bad SO239s, and I think I bought some of them from the guy that comes to the Hamfest. And what happened was the center pin in the SO230, the socket for the center pin of the connector, is too short, and the pin goes in and bottoms out, and you're out there screwing on the shell, and you make that shell tight. But then if you grab the center part of the connector, you can go like this. And not only is there side play, but there's end play into things. So I had to do some fooling around to get halfway decent SO239. Oh, and I don't have one of the relays taken apart, but at any rate, there's 6 contact pins. The 2 of them are doubled up on each part, on each of the Form C parts. It's a single pole, double throw. It's a stamped piece of like a beryllium copper with a contact spot welded onto it. They don't look like really huge contacts, but Omron's pretty good company, and I'm going to give them credit for it. I think they got it well done. The gap in there is modest. It is not like those big open frame relays, but those are open frame relays that are going to be corroded on you, and these are at least mostly sealed. You can buy a sealed version, but but they are vented. There's a tiny hole in them, and so they're silver contacts. Yeah. So the relays have been pretty decent to look at it. If anybody is good mechanical, has good mechanical skills, and it doesn't take much to be better than me, we need panels with 5/8" holes in them, and preferably in a straight line. So if anybody's interested in doing that, little sweat equity, and they want to switch, we might be able to work something out. But I don't know. I want to have this done and working well to take to Dayton, and if nothing else, do show and tell. But we might go throw some rocks at the competition and show people what they really could have for performance. So that's it. I think that's it.
All right.
It's getting late, 6 o'clock almost. Okay, Joe's got some more.
I know that he talks about me doing that. You know, it was a huge effort for Barry. I mean, it was starting out with nothing, coming up with a 4-layer layout times 4. It was a huge effort to get the things ordered, get the parts ordered, and all that. So, you know, Barry's he's the man.
I haven't sent him a bill yet, so it's.
And also Brian McCoy.
Yeah, Brian really helped. I mean, he was good about coming and testing with his.
You know, my name came up on it, but, you know, I was just the pusher of the idea. And so Brian and Barry, they're the ones that really did it. So,
Thank you.
I want to make sure everyone knew that.
Thank you.
What are you using for the boards?
I get the boards done by JLC. They're cheap, but I have had no problems with quality from them. And I've had them assemble. I don't want to kill this with static, but you can look at that. I had them do the surface mount assembly on those boards.
Well, they do the install.
They will do surface mount, no through hole, single-sided. And their component costs are peanuts. I mean, the RC stuff is like, you know, an expensive one is 4 cents. And it takes them a week, 10 days to build things, but
They ship fast.
I'm sorry?
So there's a company called Front Panel Express.
Yes, Front Panel Express. They do nice work. They're not dirt cheap.
Is that out of your price range?
Yeah, well, so kind of remains to be seen if we can commercially make this a success. If there was a unpublicized Collins Club only group buy, is anybody interested? Half a dozen, maybe 10. So to be honest, the parts count and things, we're probably looking at $250. And you're going to have to drill your own holes. it's outrageously expensive and difficult to find somebody. You know, if you're the, excuse me, if you're the replacement for the model shop and you can charge prices with lots of zeros, yeah, you can get things done. But I'd really love to find a mom and pop sheet metal shop someplace. And if you know one of those, by all means, let me know. So. Yeah, we'll give you a template. We already have the drawings of put the hole here, that kind of stuff. So that's not a problem.
Drilling the holes wouldn't be that difficult to get them in line if you just had a drill press with a fence. You
Yeah.
just slide it down and you could graduate that probably to
Can you
make
do
sure
that?
they end up in the
That
same
sounded like
place.
a volunteer.
That sounds like a yeah.
So
Okay.
instead of print-on-demand plastic, you'd be experimenting with CNC routers.
Well,
I
we did cut one that way, but it's a long amount. It's great. It's a good amount of time to grind that out.
I can do the panel in about 45 minutes on my CNC, but it's quicker. It's just quicker to drill up with a drill press. I can drill them at my house with a drill press, but I did that for the last switch, and that took a lot of time. You know, so that's why Barry's asking for somebody else if they want to buck up to do it. You want to come over and do it on my drill press? I'm more than willing to let you do that. And I have a special cutter bit for it so we can cut multiple panels simultaneously. You can drill 5 of them at a time or whatever.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have that too. And you can come over and do that. That's a nice leisurely nighttime thing sitting in front of the TV activity with a little presser wrench.
Yeah.
You can enjoy that one too.
So anyhow, it's been, I suppose, the better part of a year since we first started this, and I drug my feet with some other things, and I've got a lot of stuff going on. So, and so does Greg. I can't really put a huge amount of time into drilling holes, and I'm not that good at it, to be honest. So, if anybody's interested, I would appreciate some help. And anything else? Give it back to Charlie.
Good, thank you, Barry, that's great. And so I guess that brings it to the close for this month. Whoa, wait. Oh, yes. About the Hamfest.
All right, I know this is the Collins Club. A lot of us are CVARC members as well. About an hour and a half ago, I got a phone call. Associated Radio is going to be at the show. So we've got a vendor. So yay.
Cedar Rapids Hamfest.
Yay. Cedar Rapids Hamfest.
Excellent.
I've got a pile of flyers over there. Take them to the Collinsville, hand them out, spread the word of mouth around. Let folks down there know that we're going to have a ham fest and it's going to be worth coming to. Talk to the vendors down there, invite them up. And a little word of mouth and a little bit of face-to-face activity will get some turnout here for this event. On another note, in about a week, registration will open for Ozark Con, which is down in Branson. It will be April 3rd, 4th, 5th, I believe, that first weekend. Who here is planning to go? Yeah, we're bringing some Iowans down to that 4-state event. Yeah, we're going to have some Iowa speakers, Iowa content, and hope to see a lot of you down there. And that's it for me.
Yes.
In years past, this club, along with CVARC, has supported a special award at the Eastern Iowa Science and Engineering Fair. It's that time of year again. And the Eastern Iowa Science and Engineering Fair is exactly 2 months from today. be Saturday, March 21st at Lindale Mall. So this is my pitch for the club to support this in conjunction with CVARC. Last year, we did, in addition to the typical tech exam manual and ARRL handbook, we also gave out 2 kits, but we also had some generous donations to make that possible. This year, I don't think we'll be quite so generous, but I would like to, in addition to the manuals, hand out with the awards the new magazine that ARRL has come out with, the On the Air, which is aimed at beginning and intermediate hands. So that's my proposal in conjunction with CVARC. Support a special award at the science fair. The prizes will be a modest gift card, the book, ARRL Handbook for Seniors, Tech Exam Manual for juniors, and then the On the Air magazine for both of them. So is there a second to that motion?
So you haven't stated how much.
Oh, how much? I'm sorry. We've usually done not to exceed $50 from each club. That that almost does it. I think.
Well, handbook's more than that.
The handbook is more than, yeah. Well, even the paperback handbook is more than
So
that
you,
now.
so you're proposing 100.
So how about I'll propose 75.
How about 100?
You want to go 100? Okay, go 100. Sure. I'll take it as a friendly amendment. So not to exceed $100. Thank you. So it's moved, seconded, and
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It is
thank
passed.
you very much. I'll bring this to the attention of CVARC at their next meeting in February. I'll give them a heads up that it's coming, and we'll see if we can't pull this off again. Saturday, March 21st, we always are happy to have people from both clubs come and help judge for this special award. It means looking at every exhibit. Most of them don't have any radio or electronics content, so you can quickly move on to another one. But we have seen some pretty good exhibits in past years. I always want to encourage these young people to consider maybe a more technical career. And Dave, will you make sure that I get a flyer for the Summerfest to put in each one of these 4 packets?
Sure. I can give you the PDF file. You can.
Yep, and I'll just put them on. Yep. Well, that's on the CVARC website, isn't it?
It is.
Because I'll just get it from there then. Okay, great. Thank you. Oh, yeah.
If you want that new magazine, ask for it right away, because there's been a heavy demand for it. They only printed 16,000 copies. So really, ask for them right away.
Okay, I'll do that as soon as I get home.
So is there only one copy of it, or is it a monthly thing?
It comes out every other month, but this is February, right?
This is the initial month for it, and
Yeah,
so
so
it might be quite a
if
lot.
you get this month, you need to ask for it right away.
Any other thing? Those are interesting pop-ups.
Over there.
Oh, yes.
March 7th is the annual Storm Spotter training. So that's a point that I bring up every year, so now you know.
All right.
I think people are familiar with that. If not,
Right.
you can ask me.
Right.
Same location, same building. It's maybe in a different spot in the building. Right.
All right, good. Anything else? Great.
Okay, so April 21st is our next meeting.
Right.
And I'm speaking, but we have 2 more open slots for this year's speakers for the follow-on meetings. If you're interested in speaking at a Collins meeting here, let me know.
And
I have one thing. The video, which is typically on the site, well, it's on typically tonight, and everybody gets the email tomorrow. Won't be on for a week because I leave at 05:40 in the morning.
it's going to where it's warm.
Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah. Breaking my heart.
Sorry.
You had something else? Oh, okay.
One
Anything
more,
else?
One more thing for those people that still work. Or still work, or maybe are completely retired and would like to get a badge access. I am the sponsor. So for those of you who have your contractor badge, good news. I get an email once a year to verify that you're not a terrorist. Therefore, no more coming into work to go to the security office. You're fine. That contractor badge, per to the way we've set it up with the Global Security Office here at Collins, is a contractor badge. That is a you can go anywhere unescorted on the campus. Yeah, so it's a contractor badge with its nice little C on it. I'll give an example for the second badge here, because I got to go pick up 2 today. That means you can go anywhere on campus that an American contractor can go unescorted. We haven't restrained that. The reason why that is the way it is because this is assuming that you've been a retiree working here at Collins. You all know the repercussions of misbehavior. So please send me an email. It's christopher.caldwell@collins.com. That it would be the email if you want to go verify it. I can send you the PDF from the security office, and if you fill that out and then send it to me, I can then go get it or hand it to me either by mail or via just an electronic PDF. I can go get that submitted, have a badge made up for you, and then give it to you at a club meeting. So that seems to be the way we're going to set it up from here on out, so that we don't have to constantly call and go slide through the security system. Also, if you're still at Collins and you haven't retired yet, do this before you retire, because that makes the transition pretty easy. We can just go walk up to 106 and we can take your current badge, and on your last day have it do the transition. So that's kind of how the process is going to work with the security office. Any other questions about that?
So do you have to actually go to the security office to get it?
So in that case, I discovered that I don't have to have you guys go.
As long as they've got a picture that's active.
Correct. So
if you retired in the last year or 2.
So your brother,
Yes.
who needs to send me an email about the subject again, I can send him a PDF. I don't know which email he'd like.
I'll send it to you.
Okay,
I'll get
I will. I can send him. So, for example, Tim Snodgrass can receive a PDF, and then he can fill it out and send it to me via email. I'll print it out, hand write out my portion of it, then rescan it in and send it over to the security office. They will then, due to the fact that he was a retiree and that his post company complete employee badge no longer is operational, will print him a new badge. And then I can go pick that up, and because I'm effectively all of your all's boss, go give you your badge. That's how this works nowadays. So
You've been amazingly generous to me.
you're welcome.
I'm very thankful for security being able to.
Yeah. The yes.
Prior contractor badges,
No. That's not what I'm saying. So the question was, and I get this often sometimes, is my current badge that we 2 summers ago went out and we met Mike Koenig up at 106 or 105. We put you in the safe system. We escorted you up to the 106 office, and I don't know if pictures were taken or whatever. I don't know the process. That process occurred, and you received a badge. You are now on a list that the month before it expires, I get, hey, does this person still need access to the facility? And I go, yes, physical access, go. And I retype in your information into the Collins system, and off we go. So I've done that for you. I've done that for a few other couple people. I've set it up. I'm going to set it up so that everyone expires on the 31st of December every year. So it's this nice end of the year, welcome to December, let's go celebrate Christmas by reinstating all my retirees into the system. So
Great. We appreciate that.
that's how we're doing it. I'm not the president, but if there's anything else.
Anything else?
Oh, shush.
Could have. Oh. No, we need him as a treasurer forever. Okay, I think that's it. Anything else? Thank you all for coming. We'll see you in April.